The slap echoed like a firecracker. Tourists paused mid-step. A mother froze with her stroller. Cameras dropped. Mouths opened. The park fell silent. Standing in his towering ceremonial uniform, Marcus Ellison didn't flinch. His jaw clenched, yes, but he stayed motionless, regal, as trained, as expected. Across from him, the man responsible, a thick-armed biker with a serpent tattoo twisting down to his leather-gloved fist, grinned like he'd just won a trophy. The welt across Marcus's dark cheek pulsed red against the stark lines of his face. He didn't blink. From a curtained window 30 feet away, unseen by the crowd, a pair of steely gray eyes tracked the entire scene. A woman sat behind that glass, her back rigid against a small velvet chair. She was in her 70s, dressed simply in a beige wool coat, walking cane by her side. A scarf tied under her chin gave her the look of someone out for a casual stroll. But the calm in her eyes didn't match the rage building behind them. The Queen had seen everything. The slap, the sneer, the silence. She didn't move, not right away. Her voice when it came was quiet, clipped, dangerous. "Get me the phone." Her aide flinched and darted out of view. Back outside, the biker turned toward his friends. 6 of them, all clad in black denim and skull patches. Their engines revved like angry dogs. They weren't just a biker gang. They were the Iron Horns, East London's self-proclaimed predators. The leader, the one who delivered the slap, threw his arms wide. "What's he gonna do?" he yelled. "He's just a toy soldier in a fuzzy hat." The gang howled. The park didn't. It held its breath. They had no idea who was watching. Earlier that morning, Marcus Ellison, 27, second-generation British-American, son of a retired postal worker and a community nurse, had reported for duty just before sunrise. It wasn't his usual post. He'd been selected for a rare assignment, accompanying the Queen herself on one of her off-schedule park walks. Low profile, no press, no guards in formation, just Marcus, the uniform, and the weight of centuries of royal tradition on his shoulders. It was an honor. His mother had cried when he told her. His younger brother had streamed the news on social media. His father had said one sentence: "Your grandfather would be proud." That was enough. For the first hour, everything had been perfect. The Queen strolled slowly, nodding at children and pausing for squirrels. Marcus kept 3 steps behind, silent but present. A few people had recognized her. Some waved shyly, others smiled unsure. No one noticed the Iron Horns as they rolled into the park. Their engines snarled like wild animals, scattering pigeons and silencing the laughter. Snake, their leader, a 40-something slab of muscle with a shaved head and a permanent sneer, was first to dismount. He spotted Marcus from across the green and spat something on the pavement. He hated uniforms, especially polished ones worn by black men standing tall. "Oi," Snake muttered to his gang. "Look at this guy, playing Buckingham Barbie." The others snorted. One of them made kissy sounds. The Queen's personal security, following from a distance, subtly motioned for her to move behind a line of hedges. She nodded, though her gaze stayed glued to the unfolding scene. The bikers walked up slowly, boots crunching on gravel. Marcus didn't move. They circled him. Snake was in front, 2 inches from Marcus's face. "You better than me, huh?" he said, standing there all clean and shiny. "Not gonna talk?" Silence. "What's the matter?" Snake said. "Too royal to say hello?" Marcus remained still. His training told him not to react, but inside his blood simmered. Snake's grin dropped. He stepped closer. Then, without warning, he swung. The sound cracked across the park. Marcus didn't flinch, didn't speak. The Queen, watching from behind the curtain, tightened her fingers around the armrest of her chair. Her knuckles paled. Her aide returned with a secure phone in hand. She didn't touch it. "Not yet," she said. "Let's see how he handles this." The crowd was small at first, just tourists, joggers, a few curious locals. But people had phones, and phones meant social media. Within minutes, a dozen video streams had started. One camera in particular, held by a retired photojournalist with a weathered Nikon, caught everything. Snake didn't like the lack of reaction. It robbed him of power. So he leaned in again. "Maybe he's broken," Snake sneered. "Maybe we hit him too hard." A child in the crowd tugged his mom's sleeve. Why are they being mean to him? The mom didn't answer. Snake raised a hand again. This time a voice cut through the murmurs. Not loud, but sharp. You should be ashamed. The crowd turned. The speaker was the old man with the camera. He stepped forward, his hand trembling slightly as he pointed it at the gang. You're harassing a man doing his duty. In front of children, in front of your country. Snake turned to him slowly. Who the hell are you? The park police? The man didn't back down. He's standing for something. You're hiding behind noise. There was a pause, a long one. Then Snake snorted and turned back to Marcus. We'll see if you're still standing next time, Statue Boy. He waved at his gang. Let's roll. The iron horns mounted up, the engines drowning out the tension they left behind. Marcus stood still. The queen behind her curtain let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. He's braver than most soldiers I've known, she whispered. And I've known a few. By the time the gang left the park, the slap video had already gone viral. 3 angles, 1 slow motion, 1 with subtitles. He slapped a royal guard. He didn't know who was watching. Some viewers were outraged by the biker's audacity. Others debated whether Marcus should have fought back. The queen didn't comment publicly, but her eyes had told her staff everything they needed to know. She wasn't done with Snake, and neither was Marcus. Because while the iron horns roared off down the avenue, laughing and revving like hyenas, Snake didn't realize what he'd started. He didn't know the man in uniform had a name, or a family, or a reason to never back down. He just saw a hat, a jacket, a statue. But Marcus Ellison wasn't a statue, and Snake was about to learn that the hard way. Honestly, if this part made you feel anything, hit that like button, drop a comment, and share it forward. Let's make it ripple. Snake's boot slammed into the floorboards of the pub. The cracked wooden table trembled as every bottle on it rattled. Around him, the rest of the iron horns sat in a loose circle, beers in hand, all feigning confidence but tense in the shoulders. The pub's back room smelled like old sweat, motor oil, and something more dangerous. Humiliation. Snake was still fuming. That guard stood there like we were nothing, he growled, like we weren't even worth a flinch. A wiry man with a scar under one eye leaned forward, his patch stitched with a horned skull. We made a scene, boss. We put it out there. No, we didn't, Snake snapped. We got filmed, and then we left, like cowards. He paced the room, coiled like a snake with no plan but plenty of venom. The welt on his own wrist, still faintly red from the chain he'd yanked too hard during his earlier outburst, throbbed with every step. You think people won't notice, Snake said, that he just took it? That some punk in red stood taller than us? Another biker, this one older, quieter, muttered under his breath. Maybe don't slap him next time, boss. The room went silent. Snake turned. What? The man looked away, said nothing more. Snake sneered. This ain't over. That uniform, that smug silence. The way that crowd looked at us like we were trash? Nah, we don't walk away from that. He snatched up his phone, but before he could open any app, it buzzed in his hand. A message. Unknown number. You're playing a dangerous game. Walk away before it's too late. Snake stared at the screen, then laughed. Now people are threatening me? From burner numbers? He turned the screen toward the gang. Looks like we've made someone nervous. The others chuckled, uneasy, uncertain. Back at Buckingham Palace, the Queen hadn't touched her tea. She sat in the sunroom with the blinds drawn, watching the city from above like a general eyeing a battlefield. Her aide stood nearby, phone still in hand, waiting for instruction. She finally spoke. Get me the head of security. Yes, Your Majesty. I want to know everything about this gang. Names, past, habits, who they owe money to, who they answer to. Right away. And Marcus? Still on duty. Finished his shift an hour ago. She nodded. He stood his ground when most would have broken. He's earned more than silence. At the barracks, Marcus Ellison was sitting on the lower bunk, jacket folded neatly beside him. He sipped from a chipped white mug as his fellow guards filtered in from the hallway, all pretending they hadn't seen the news, even though it was still playing on the wall-mounted television above the lockers. One of them broke the silence. You good, mate? Marcus looked up, nodded once. It's part of the job. Part of the job? Another guard repeated, furrowing his brow. Taking abuse from thugs with motorcycles? Marcus shook his head slowly. We signed up to serve. That means composure, not pride. He didn't say what he was really thinking, that it wasn't just about training. It was about something older, deeper. You let one man break you in front of a crowd, and the next man thinks you're weaker, and the next and the next. Still, that slap. It had landed harder than he expected. Not the pain, the silence after. That was the thing that kept replaying. Snake didn't sleep that night. Neither did Marcus. At 2:43 a.m., Marcus stood at his window, staring out at the lights of South London. Somewhere out there, he knew Snake was awake too, brewing, planning. That man wasn't the type to disappear into the shadows. He was the type who came back louder. What worried Marcus more wasn't the risk to himself. It was the crowd. The little boy who had yelled, "Leave him alone." The photographer who had spoken up. The queen who had watched everything unfold but never intervened until the exact right moment. He didn't want them caught in something bigger than a slap. The next morning, the Ironhorns met again. Same pub, different mood. Snake slammed his beer on the table. We go back. One of the bikers raised an eyebrow. To the park? Number this time, we don't just cruise by. We put on a show. He leaned in, voice low but electric. Let's see how long our silent night can keep that statue act going when the pressure turns up. A slow murmur passed through the room. One man looked around nervously. We sure this is a good idea? Security's probably watching us now. Snake's grin twisted. Let them watch. He didn't notice his phone buzzing again. Another anonymous message. You're not ready for what's coming. Meanwhile, the Queen's security team had already flagged multiple biker movements across the city. GPS data, CCTV snapshots, vehicle logs, and most of it was heading one direction, back toward the park. Her head of security briefed her directly. They're circling again, ma'am, loud, aggressive, testing the public. They're moving like this is a game of chicken. She leaned back, fingers steepled beneath her chin. They're not just testing the public. They're testing him. She didn't say Marcus's name. She didn't have to. Marcus stepped back into his uniform just after dawn, pressed every seam, checked his gloves twice. That morning, his phone buzzed with messages from home. His mom sent a photo of the family watching him on TV. His dad, normally stoic, had texted just one word: proud. He put the phone away. He was focused now, because the air felt different today. The sky looked calm, but he could feel it coming. By midday, the clouds over the park had thickened, gray and low, like the sky knew what was coming. Marcus Ellison stood in position, same spot, same posture, hands resting on the hilt of his ceremonial sword, chin high, eyes fixed on the horizon. His red tunic was crisp, his tall bearskin hat immovable. To the casual passerby, he looked calm, timeless. But inside, every sense was alert, every breath deliberate. He could feel the vibrations before he heard the engines. Just past noon, a low growl rolled in from the north. Engines, heavy ones. They weren't just passing through this time. They were announcing themselves. Tourists began to drift away from the park's center. Some clutched shopping bags tighter. Others pulled out their phones, filming the growing tension. Parents herded children toward the gates. Then they came into view. 7 motorcycles, black and chrome, forming a line as they pulled onto the cobbled path. At the front, as expected, was Snake. He cut the engine first, boots landing hard on the ground as he dismounted. He looked different today. No sneer, no jokes, just fury, controlled for now. "Morning, soldier boy," he called out, walking forward. His voice carried across the green, sarcastic but sharp. "Miss us?" Marcus didn't move, didn't blink. Snake kept walking, stopping just short of arm's length. He stared up at the man he'd slapped just the day before, searching for something. "You know," he said, glancing back at his gang, "this is what they call British discipline. Real noble, right? Standing there while people walk all over you." He turned back to the crowd. They were gathering again, phones raised, uncertain whether to stay or run. Too bad it comes with a side of arrogance, Snake muttered. Another biker revved his engine loud and fast. The noise bounced between buildings. A little girl nearby clutched her father's leg. He lifted her up quickly and backed away. Still, Marcus didn't move. Snake's jaw tightened. What's the matter? Cat got your tongue again? No answer. Snake's fingers twitched at his side. Behind him, one of his guys whispered, Boss, this is getting weird. Snake didn't break eye contact with Marcus. Let's see how long you last when things get messy. He reached forward and grabbed the edge of Marcus's jacket, tugging it just enough to disrupt the line of his uniform. The crowd gasped. A few tourists shouted. One woman stepped forward, hand outstretched like she might actually intervene. But before she, or anyone, could act, a voice sliced through the tension like a knife. That's enough. Everyone froze. The sound hadn't come from the crowd. It hadn't come from a guard or the police. It came from her, the Queen. She stepped forward slowly, emerging from behind a row of security officers who had been shadowing her every step. Her presence stopped the scene cold. She wore a pale coat, no crown, no scepter, nothing theatrical. But her presence filled the park like thunder. The crowd parted without instruction. Snake turned, stunned, his hand still holding the edge of Marcus's jacket. The Queen's face was calm, but her eyes, sharp steel, unwavering, locked onto Snake like a target. Let go of him, she said. No yell, no panic, just command. For a few seconds, Snake didn't move. He stood there gripping the cloth as the air held its breath. Then slowly, he let go. The jacket fell back into place. He stepped back one pace, trying to laugh it off. Well, well, he said, forcing a grin. Didn't think royalty made house calls. The Queen ignored him. She walked forward, stopping just a few feet from Marcus. Her guard stood back, close enough to act, but trusting her judgment. She turned her attention to Snake. You've insulted this man, she said, her voice louder now. A man who swore to serve and protect this country with dignity. You've embarrassed yourselves in front of the public, the press, and now your Queen. Snake looked down, then up again, trying to regain his swagger. It was just a bit of fun, he muttered. Number. It wasn't, she replied. This is not fun. This is harassment. And it ends now, the crowd murmured. The words had weight. More than royal scolding, they were moral judgment. Snake glanced back at his gang. Some of them looked uncertain now. Their confidence from the previous day had started to fade. You don't get to decide what ends and what doesn't, Snake said. You may be Queen, but out here, we make our own rules. The Queen tilted her head slightly. Do you? Then allow me to remind you of the rules you claim to live by. Intimidation has consequences, and I assure you, those consequences are coming. Snake's face tightened. The veins in his neck pulsed. He looked around. Crowd filming, guards watching, a nation's eyes narrowing through 1,000 camera lenses. One of his men, younger, nervous, finally stepped closer and muttered, Maybe we should go. This ain't worth it. Snake's hand clenched into a fist. He didn't speak. He didn't need to, because then came the sound. Sirens, multiple, growing louder. The Queen's security had already called him backup. Snake realized it too late. Looks like your time's up, the Queen said softly. Snake turned to her, jaw locked. We'll see ourselves out, he muttered. The iron horns mounted up fast, no more bravado, just noise and retreat. Snake was the last to climb onto his bike. As he twisted the throttle, he shot Marcus one last glare, full of venom. Then they were gone. Applause rippled through the park. It started slow, one hand, then three, then many. People clapped, not just for the Queen, but for Marcus, for not moving, for standing tall. A woman approached him, holding the hand of the same boy who had spoken up the day before. She didn't say anything, just nodded. The boy saluted awkwardly, then ran off giggling. The Queen stepped beside Marcus, her voice lowered. You've done well today. Marcus didn't respond right away. He kept watching the horizon, the place the gang had vanished into. Then he spoke. Thank you, ma'am, his voice steady, but behind his eyes something churned, because he knew Snake wasn't done. Men like that didn't fade quietly. And the way Snake had looked at him, that wasn't over. It was a warning. The iron horns didn't disappear into the wind. They circled back. Less than 3 blocks from the park, they gathered in a rundown pub with cracked windows and a flickering sign that buzzed like a wasp nest. Snake threw open the back door, stormed inside, and slammed his helmet onto the bar. Glasses jumped. Everyone inside stopped talking. Nobody dared joke this time. The gang followed in behind him, leather jackets creaking, boots stomping, egos bruised. Snake's fingers drummed on the edge of the bar until they curled into fists. "That old woman," he said, his voice low and tight. "That uniformed clown. That whole damn crowd. They all think we're weak now." The others stayed silent. Finally, Skull, a lanky man with a skull patch stitched over a burn hole in his jacket, spoke up. "We can't just let it go, boss. If we do, people will think we're soft." Snake didn't answer. He was staring at the bar, eyes distant, as if watching the slap in reverse. Then his mouth twitched. Not a smile. Something more dangerous. "No, we don't let it go." He turned and faced them. "We make sure they never forget us." Back at Buckingham Palace, the Queen sat near her window again. But this time, her fingers were still, her breath measured. The aide returned with a folder, thick and marked "Confidential." "Your Majesty, this is everything we have on the Iron Horns." She took it without a word and opened to the first page. Names, arrest records, business fronts, known associates, and one photo that caught her attention. Snake, mid-laugh, a long chain looped across his chest like a trophy. Behind him, barely visible, stood a different man. Suit, sunglasses. Not part of the gang. "Who's that?" "We're still working on an ID, Your Majesty." The Queen closed the folder. "Then work faster." She stood. "They're not finished, and neither are we." Marcus returned to the barracks around dusk. He was tired, but not from the standing, not from the crowd, from what hadn't happened, because that's what worried him most. The silence. His fellow guards greeted him with nods, casual on the surface but edged with concern. One of them held up a paper. Front page. Again. The headline read, "Royal Guard holds his ground again." Marcus took the paper, skimmed it, then set it aside. "Not the kind of attention I wanted." "You handled yourself well," one of them said. "That won't be the last of it," another added. Marcus nodded. His body was still, but his mind paced. He'd seen men like Snake before, people who couldn't accept being humiliated. Not once, not twice, and certainly not publicly. This wasn't about a slap anymore. This was about control, power, and Snake had lost both. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. Every creak in the floor, every gust of wind outside the window, every footstep down the hall, his instincts stayed sharp, his muscles never fully relaxed. Somewhere in London, Snake was planning, and Marcus knew he wasn't just coming for him. Snake didn't waste time. Over the next 2 days, reports trickled in. Broken storefronts, vandalized buses, motorcycles speeding through quiet neighborhoods at night, roaring loud enough to wake entire apartment blocks. At first, police treated it as random biker noise, typical Iron Horns mischief. But then a pattern emerged. They weren't hitting random places. They were circling, closer. Each night, the incidents edged inward, forming a spiral toward Buckingham Palace. The Queen's security team mapped the events. Her head of security stood in front of a large board. Red dots scattered like blood across the city. "It's deliberate, ma'am. They're testing response times, gauging how fast we mobilize, how close they can get before we react. And Marcus? Still on regular duty. Do we pull him?" The Queen paused. "Number." He stood firm when they wanted him to break. "If we pull him now, we reward their threat. But I want him protected." Quietly. "Yes, Your Majesty." Marcus continued his shifts, his routine never breaking. But tension shadowed him like a second skin. Every step he took on the palace grounds, every moment standing tall in that uniform, he could feel the city watching. He could feel the horns closing in. During a short break, One of the guards approached with a grin, holding a folded paper. You've made the evening edition too. Marcus didn't bother opening it. You know they're coming back, right? The guard added. Marcus nodded. I'm ready. Even if he didn't say it out loud, he was. That evening, as Marcus walked home through a quiet South London street, he noticed something. 3 bikes, parked near a corner shop, black jackets, iron horn insignias. A man leaned against one of the bikes, stocky, scar across his nose, revving the engine like it was a weapon. Hey there, soldier boy. Marcus didn't stop walking, didn't acknowledge them, but he felt their eyes on him. He turned the corner, and their laughter echoed behind him. They didn't follow, not yet. But it was a message. Back at the palace, the queen stood beside her security chief, looking over the same map. They're circling tighter, she said. Yes, ma'am. Then it's time we send our own message, she turned. They don't get to set the rules. Not in my city. That night, Snake met with his gang in an abandoned warehouse on the east side. The place smelled like rust and gasoline. Snake stood over a table with a crumpled city map. A red circle marked a location, 2 blocks from the palace gates. A square. Public. Crowded. We hit here. Skull looked hesitant. Won't the cops be waiting? Snake grinned. Good, let 'em come. He pointed at the circle. We go full force. Bikes, chains, noise, chaos. He looked up. Let's see how brave their little guard is when this time we don't hold back. The gang cheered, but no one noticed the phone in Snake's pocket vibrating again. A final warning. This ends badly. For you. The next morning, the city felt on edge. Not just the usual morning buzz. This was different. You could feel it in the way people clutched their coffee cups tighter, in the way police cruisers passed by a little slower, in the way the guards at Buckingham Palace held their rifles a little firmer. Something was about to break. Marcus Ellison stood in his quarters, tying his boots with slow, deliberate precision. He could feel the pressure building in his chest. Not fear. Readiness. The kind that comes before a storm. He glanced once at the photo on his desk. His mother, his father, his younger brother. All smiling, unaware of what was coming. He stood, adjusted his tunic, and left without a word. Across town, Trafalgar Square was waking up. Vendors opened their carts. Tourists filtered in slowly, snapping photos, chasing pigeons, buying keychains. Street performers staked their usual corners. Violinists, magicians, costume statues waiting for coins. By 10 a.m., the square was bustling. By 10:03, everything changed. A sound cut through the chatter like a blade. Engines. Not 1, not 3, 7. The iron horns roared in, tires screeching against cobblestone as they barreled into the square. People screamed and scattered. Stalls tipped. Coffee flew. Souvenir carts toppled as bikers swerved through the open space like it belonged to them. Snake dismounted first. Boots crunching on broken plastic and shattered glass, he stepped up onto the base of the central fountain, arms spread wide. Ladies and gentlemen, he shouted, we've got a message for the palace, and today you're all going to hear it. The remaining bikers parked in a tight line, their bikes forming a wall of steel and noise. One handed Snake a chain, thick, rusted, glinting in the sun. He let it dangle from his hand like a prop. Let's see how brave their little red soldier really is. But Snake didn't know. William was already en route. After intercepting chatter, the Queen's security team had deployed a discreet response team to the square, alongside Marcus, who had volunteered to join without hesitation. As the SUV rolled to a stop just outside the square, Marcus stepped out. He didn't speak. He didn't need orders. He already knew what needed to happen. He approached the square on foot, alone. The crowd parted without being told. People gasped when they saw him. The tall man in the red tunic, bearskin hat casting a long shadow. To some, he looked like a statue brought to life. To others, a symbol of something older than fear. Snake spotted him instantly. Well, well, he said, climbing down from the fountain. Look who came to play. Marcus didn't reply. Snake stepped closer, chain still in hand. You're not going to talk, are you? You're just going to stand there again. Let me humiliate you twice. Marcus held his ground. Snake's voice dropped low, for Marcus's ears only. I warned you, soldier boy. Then with a roar he swung. The chain sliced through the air, a blur of rusted steel. But Marcus moved, smooth, precise. He stepped aside at the last second, the chain missing by inches, crashing into the ground with a clang. Gasps rippled through the square. Snake recovered and raised the chain again, but Marcus was already moving. He stepped in and grabbed Snake's wrist with both hands. The two men locked eyes. Neither blinked. The chain dangled between them, frozen in time. You think you're better than me? Snake hissed, his face red with rage. Marcus didn't flinch. I don't think I'm better, he said quietly. I just know you're not gonna break me, the crowd murmured. Someone shouted, Stand your ground, guard! Another cheered. The tension built like static in the air. The rest of the gang started inching forward, sensing their leader was losing grip. Literally. But before they could close the distance, sirens screamed into the square. Police vehicles surged in, blue lights spinning. Officers spilled out, hands near tasers and batons. Drop the chain, one shouted. Snake hesitated. His pride flared. But Marcus was still holding his wrist in an iron grip. Calm, controlled. Finally, Marcus shoved him back. Snake stumbled, off balance. The chain hit the ground. Officers closed in immediately. Hands where we can see them. Step away from the bikes. Snake's gang hesitated, eyes darting, muscles twitching. But even they knew it was over. Some dropped their weapons. Some tried to run. A few were tackled. The crowd clapped and roared, their fear flipping into relief. Snake glared at Marcus as two officers grabbed his arms. You think this is over? He hissed. You've got backup now. But next time, Marcus cut him off. Walk away while you still can. The square buzzed with energy. People clapped Marcus on the back, took photos. One elderly woman kissed his cheek and called him a hero. He nodded, polite but distant. He wasn't basking in attention. He was scanning the crowd, watching the shadows, listening. Because even as Snake was shoved into a police van, he turned to give Marcus one final look. And in that look, there was a promise. This wasn't done. That evening, Marcus returned to the barracks. One of the guards was already waiting, holding up another paper with a grin. You're front page again, Marcus sighed. You're famous now, the guard laughed. I didn't sign up to be famous. He sat down, rubbing the bridge of his nose. You think it's over? Someone asked. Marcus didn't answer, because he knew the truth. The slap was never about disrespect. The first confrontation was never just about power, and today wasn't closure. It was escalation. Snake wasn't behind bars for long. Just hours after his arrest, someone posted his bail. A man in a dark suit and tinted sunglasses waited outside the precinct. Snake climbed into the car, fists clenched. You didn't say she'd show up, he snapped. You didn't say the guard would stand me down. Again. The man in the suit handed him a folder. Then maybe it's time we stop playing small. Snake opened the folder. Inside were blueprints, maps, names. The man smiled. You want to hurt the system? Then stop chasing guards. Start aiming higher. The night after the showdown at Trafalgar Square settled like ash over London. Quiet, heavy, unnatural. Marcus Ellison walked up the steps to his flat just before 9 p.m. His ceremonial jacket folded neatly under one arm. He didn't usually take it home, but something told him tonight wasn't about routine. The streets were calm, too calm. No barking dogs, no late-night chatter from the upstairs couple. Even the hum of traffic felt thinner, more distant. He slid the key into the lock and stepped inside. The air felt wrong the moment he closed the door. His instincts lit up, years of training activating without permission. He didn't turn on the lights, didn't call out. He just listened. And then he heard it. A faint creak. Floorboards, not his. He set the jacket down quietly and moved toward the corner cabinet, where an old walking stick, a gift from his late grandfather, rested behind the broom. Oak, heavy, balanced. He wrapped his fingers around it and waited. Another sound. A breath. Someone was in the next room. Then came the voice. Low, mocking. You thought this was over? Marcus's grip tightened. Snake? You thought standing tall would keep us away? That just because people clapped, we disappear? More footsteps behind Snake. 2, maybe 3. More of them. Marcus stayed silent. It wasn't fear keeping him still. It was calculation. The living room lights flickered, and then cut completely. Darkness swallowed the space. Another voice called out, "Let's drag the statue into the dirt." The glass shattered. Someone had smashed the kitchen window. They were in. Marcus moved fast. He didn't wait for Snake to finish his threats. He stepped into the hallway and swung the cane wide. The first man caught it in the ribs, hard, and went down gasping. The second came at him with a crowbar. Marcus dodged, spun, drove the end of the stick into the man's shin. The crunch was sickening. A third lunged from the left, bigger, faster. But Marcus caught him with a sweeping strike to the knee, dropping him before he could land a hit. Then came Snake. He stepped through the doorway, silhouetted by faint streetlight pouring in through the broken blinds. His face was half-shadowed, but the sneer was unmistakable. A knife glinted in his right hand. "You're gonna regret that, soldier boy." Marcus raised the stick. "Come find out." Snake lunged. Their weapons collided, metal against wood, sparking noise and motion in the dark. Marcus deflected, blocked, countered, moving with efficiency, not rage. But Snake was relentless. Every strike was faster, meaner. His blade cut through the air with precision, forcing Marcus to give ground. Sparks flew as the stick caught the knife's edge. The room spun in motion, furniture crashing, picture frames shattering, books knocked from shelves. A crash in the kitchen. More boots. Reinforcements. Then came the scream of radio static. From outside, a voice, calm but urgent. "We've got a situation at the guard's residence. Multiple attackers, requesting backup now." It was the Queen's security detail. They'd been watching. Outside, a plainclothes officer leaned against a parked vehicle. Eyes on the flat, hand pressed to an earpiece. "Confirmed intrusion," he said. "Reinforcements in motion." Inside, Marcus wasn't waiting for help. He knocked another attacker into the wall, disarmed the one with the crowbar, and kicked his weapon across the room. But Snake kept coming. "You think you're better than me?" he snarled, face twisted with rage. "Just because you wear their colors?" Marcus blocked another strike. "I never said I was better." He twisted the walking stick, knocking the knife from Snake's hand and driving him backward. "But I'm not afraid of you." Snake stumbled, hit the bookshelf, then pushed himself forward again, this time with fists. The two crashed into the coffee table, splintering it in half. Glass cracked beneath their boots. Blood smeared the floor. Marcus didn't know whose. He didn't care. He had to finish this. Then finally the sirens. Not distant this time. Here. Now police vehicles pulled up in formation. Officers in tactical gear flooded the street. Blue lights splashed across the flat's exterior. Inside, the remaining bikers froze. "Cops!" one of them shouted. Snake hissed under his breath, eyes darting to the shattered kitchen window. "This isn't over," he growled, backing toward the exit. "You got lucky tonight." He turned, motioned for his men to scatter, and climbed through the window. The others followed, limping, scrambling into the alley. Marcus didn't chase. He dropped the walking stick, blood running down his forearm, and exhaled hard. The apartment was wrecked. Shattered glass, smashed furniture, blood on the tile, silence ringing in his ears. A few seconds later, the door burst open. Queen's security entered first. Weapons ready, then medics, then police. Marcus sat down slowly against the wall, breathing heavy. The Queen's security officer knelt beside him. "You okay?" Marcus nodded once. "They're escalating," the officer said. "This wasn't just a warning. They came to hurt you." "I know, we're moving you. You're not safe here." Marcus looked around. His home, what was left of it, felt like a battlefield. "Okay," he said. Back at their hideout, Snake slammed his fists into a table. 3 of his men were injured, 2 arrested, 1 still missing. "They came in swinging," Skull muttered, nursing a dislocated shoulder. Snake paced like a caged animal. "They think they can humiliate us in the park, in the square, and now at that guard's own flat?" He slammed a fist again. "That's the last time we play defense." He turned to the rest of the gang. now thinned, bruised, shaken. We don't hit the man anymore. We hit the system, the queen, the palace, everything they think is untouchable. He leaned over a battered city map spread across a workbench. We're not done. Not even close. At the palace, the queen reviewed the footage from the security feed. She watched in silence as Marcus fought in the dark. She didn't flinch as the cane cracked bones, didn't blink as the knife flashed through the air. When the video ended, she turned to her chief of security. What are we doing? We're tracking them, monitoring chatter, but their movements are unpredictable, and someone's helping them, posting bail, supplying intel. Find out who. Yes, Your Majesty. And Marcus? He's under full protection. We've relocated him to a secure royal residence until we get ahead of this. Good. She stood, walking to the window, hands behind her back. This isn't just about him anymore. This is about what he represents. If we let them win, even once, we lose the country's spine. Marcus sat on the edge of a temporary bed that night, bandages wrapped around his forearm. His phone buzzed. It was a message from his mom. Saw the news. Are you okay? He didn't answer right away. He looked out the window. New place, new neighborhood, temporary walls. He typed one word, always, then set the phone down and stared into the dark. Because he knew Snake wasn't finished, and this time, the whole country might be the target. Snake stood in front of a dusty mirror in the back room of the Iron Horn's hideout, the fluorescent light above him flickering like it might give out at any moment. His lip was split. His knuckles were bandaged, his pride still bleeding. The ambush at Marcus's flat hadn't gone as planned. He hadn't expected the guard to fight like that, hadn't expected palace security to arrive so fast. But worst of all, he hadn't expected to lose. Again. Behind him, the gang was quiet. The laughter was gone. Even Skull, his most loyal enabler, sat hunched in the corner, a bandage around his ribs and a cold beer pressed to his cheekbone. Snake turned to face them. They all think this is over. Nobody responded. They think locking me up for a night, chasing us out of a park, dragging our names through the papers, that's gonna shut us down? His voice rose, filling the space like a sermon. They're wrong. He walked slowly around the room, grabbing a chalk marker from the table. He stopped at a wall covered in old maps, schedules, faded headlines. In the center, he drew a large X over Marcus's face from a clipped newspaper photo. This ain't about him anymore. He drew a circle around Buckingham Palace. This is about the machine that made him, the Queen, the press, the so-called order of things. That's who we're coming for now. That same evening, in a sleek black car parked across town, Snake met the man in the suit again, the same one who'd bailed him out. You didn't mention the guard could fight like that, Snake muttered, flexing his wrist. The man smiled calmly. And you didn't mention you had no discipline. Snake's nostrils flared, but he bit his tongue. You wanted attention, the man continued. You got it. Now let's give that attention shape. Let's turn it into power. He handed Snake another folder, this one thicker. Inside were blueprints, manifestos, encrypted codes. On the first page, Phase 2, build the network. What's this? Your next step. Discontent is everywhere, Snake. You're not the only one tired of being dismissed, laughed at, left behind. You mean there are more like me? Thousands, tens of thousands. And they're just waiting for someone to say what they've been too afraid to shout. Snake grinned. Then let's give them a voice. Within a week, Snake had done just that. He took to live streams, masking his face at first, then showing it once his followers passed the 10,000 mark. His voice was gravel over fire. You think they care about you, he said. You think that palace looks out for working people? Immigrants, kids with nothing in their pockets. All they care about is tradition, image, control. Well, we're not playing their game anymore. We're writing our own rules. The chat flooded with emojis, fists, fire, black flags. Someone dropped the hashtag #, take back the crown, and it stuck. Snake leaned into it hard. What started as a local biker gang's rebellion exploded into something else. The Queen's inner circle took notice immediately. Protests were spreading across London, some peaceful, others volatile. A few called for reforms. But most, especially the ones linked to Snake's new network, called for destruction. Signs popped up across the city. No more monarchy. Down with the crown. You serve yourself, not us. The Queen stood before a digital screen inside the war room, red pins marking protest locations. She listened as her head of security spoke. He's no longer acting alone. He's pulling in ex-labor organizers, anti-establishment radicals, fringe influencers. Some of them are smart, strategic. They're spreading fast through underground channels. How many of these people are truly his? Hard to say. Some are just angry, some are loyal, some just want chaos. And Marcus? He's still under protection, but he wants to help. He's offered to go back into the field. The Queen was quiet for a long moment. He's brave, but he's also a symbol now. If something happens to him, the officer nodded. We understand. Marcus sat in a secured townhouse 2 blocks from the Thames, staring at the latest clips from Snake's broadcasts. He recognized some of the faces behind Snake now. Not gang members, teachers, disgruntled factory workers, former military, teenagers, people who weren't part of the horns, people who were listening. That's what worried him most. This wasn't about him anymore. It wasn't even about Snake. It was about rage without direction, pain without hope, and Snake had turned himself into a mouthpiece for both. That night, Snake stood on a makeshift stage in an abandoned factory, lit by hanging bulbs and flanked by men in leather jackets and cheap balaclavas. The room was packed. At least 200 people stood shoulder to shoulder, eyes wide, fists clenched, hearts ignited. They think this city belongs to them, Snake shouted, pointing westward toward Buckingham Palace. But it doesn't. It belongs to us, to everyone they've ignored, everyone they've silenced. We're not asking anymore. We're taking it. The crowd roared. Behind the masses, hidden in the shadows near a rusted stairwell, a plainclothes officer watched and recorded everything. His voice whispered through a concealed mic. Confirmed. Snake's building an army. Back at the palace, the Queen met privately with her most trusted advisors. We underestimated him, she said. We saw a gang leader, but he's become something else. We're looking at social collapse if this gains more traction, one aide said. The intelligence services are concerned. Then we address it at the root, the Queen replied. What root? She turned, eyes sharp. Despair. Disconnection. They don't believe in anything anymore. Not systems, not leadership, not each other. And Snake gave them something to believe in, even if it's poison. So what do? The head of security asked. We fight fire with dignity, order, transparency, humanity. She paused. And we protect Marcus at all cost. Marcus knew the storm was only beginning. He didn't ask to be a hero, didn't want the attention, but he knew something else too. People were watching him, for strength, for calm, for proof that you didn't have to be loud to stand your ground. Later that evening, Snake sat in a candlelit office carved out of the factory's second floor. Maps on the walls, screens showing protest live feeds. A black flag with a red crown slashed in half hung above his desk. The man in the suit stepped inside. Phase 2 is complete, Snake said, without turning around. Then it's time for Phase 3. And what's that? The man smiled. Public spectacle. You don't shake a system by whispering. You tear it down with a roar. The morning fog over London was thick, gray, and still. But underneath the quiet, the city was humming with tension. Word had spread fast, faster than anyone in the palace had expected. Social media feeds exploded with hashtags, Churchhouse Take Back, The Crown, Enaj or March on the Palace. End the throne. Snake's latest video had dropped at 3:47 a.m. sharp, eyes wild with defiance as he declared a final move. They think they can silence us. They think a palace wall means power, but it's just stone, and today we knock on their front door. By sunrise, thousands were on the move. Inside Buckingham Palace, the Queen stood at a long table surrounded by senior officials, intelligence officers, and armed security personnel. Maps, aerial images, and live feeds streamed across the monitors behind them. We've confirmed Snake's plans, the head of security said. They're headed straight for the palace gates. How many? At least 8,000. and growing. There's talk of trucks bringing in more from Birmingham and Manchester. Not all are violent, but the mood's shifting fast. The Queen didn't flinch. Weapons? We've intercepted chatter. Some of them are armed with knives, clubs, makeshift explosives. The Metropolitan Police are stretched. If this escalates, it could become a national crisis. And Marcus? Safe for now, ma'am. But he asked to be stationed at the gate. The room went silent. I told him we'd manage without him, the security chief added. He insisted. The Queen's lips tightened. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Then let him stand. But keep our eyes on him. I won't lose him to this madness. By mid-morning they came, a flood of voices, boots, chants. Protesters surged down every major road surrounding the palace. Some held signs, others held fists. Many were just faces in the tide, angry, disillusioned, caught in a movement far larger than they understood. And at the front of it all, standing atop a black flatbed truck, megaphone in hand, was Snake. No jacket today, no helmet, just a black hoodie, sleeves rolled, revealing the coiled snake tattoo twisting around his arm. His voice, amplified and raw, echoed across the square. You see that palace? That fence? That gate? That's not power. That's fear. That's a prison for people who never earned what they own. The crowd roared. You're not just protesters. You're history. You're the ones who finally stood up and said, no more. He jumped down from the truck, his boots slamming the pavement. Tonight, we finish what we started. Inside the gates, Marcus stood in full ceremonial dress. He hadn't been ordered there. He'd volunteered. Beside him stood a line of royal guards and police in riot gear, shields at the ready. But it was Marcus, tall, red-jacketed, silent, who drew the crowd's attention. Snake spotted him from across the gates, maybe 50 feet away. His grin twisted like broken wire. Still hiding behind your silence, huh? Snake shouted. The chants dimmed. People turned. Marcus didn't blink, didn't speak. Snake climbed onto the palace fence, clutching the bars with both hands like he meant to rip them down. Why don't you come out here and face me? His voice was electric now, charged with the tension of 100 phones capturing every second. You're not a symbol, you're a puppet, the Queen's pet. And when this ends, no one will remember your name. Still, Marcus didn't move. His stillness wasn't silence. It was steel. Snake's lip curled. I'll make you move. He jumped down and marched through the crowd toward the gate, pushing people aside. The front line surged with him. The fence groaned. Guards tensed. Behind Marcus, officers readied shields. Hands hovered near tasers and sidearms. And then, the fence cracked open. A section of it gave under the pressure. Crowds flooded through. Chaos exploded like gunpowder. Snake made his move. He lunged through the breach, straight toward Marcus, fists raised. Marcus stepped forward. They met in the middle. No guards, no barriers. Just two men in the middle of history. Snake swung hard. Marcus blocked it with one arm, pivoted and countered. His punch landed square in Snake's ribs, sending the man stumbling backward. But Snake didn't fall. He charged again, roaring, fists flailing. He caught Marcus across the jaw. One good hit. But Marcus didn't drop. He absorbed it and answered. His next punch drove Snake to the ground. Around them, shouting, panic, flashbulbs, sirens. Marcus stood tall, chest heaving, eyes sharp. Snake groaned, trying to rise, but Marcus placed one polished boot firmly on his chest. It's over, Marcus said, his voice heard clearly for the first time. You've already lost. From behind the guards, a single voice rose above the chaos. Enough. It wasn't shouted, but it cut through everything. The Queen. She emerged from behind her security. No crown, no ceremony, just presence. People froze. Even Snake. The Queen walked forward slowly, stopping beside Marcus. She looked down at Snake. This man who had burned her city, threatened her people, and used pain like a weapon. Then she looked at the crowd. Some shouted, some booed, but most watched in silence. You think this is power, she asked, her voice firm. Tearing down? Hurting others? Real strength is what you see beside me. She turned to Marcus. This man has faced you twice, And he never raised a hand until you forced one. And still, he shows restraint. She paused. Because dignity isn't about silence. It's about knowing when to speak and when to stand. Police finally surged forward, separating the crowd, moving Snake into custody. He didn't fight. Not this time. He just stared at Marcus with something between hatred and fear. "You'll regret this," Snake hissed as officers restrained him. Marcus said nothing, because there was nothing more to prove. That night, as London quieted, the Queen and Marcus stood alone in a private hall inside the palace. "You stood your ground when others would have run," she said, "and you did it with more courage than any speech I could have given." Marcus shook his head. "I didn't do it for glory." The Queen nodded. "I know, but sometimes the right act becomes the story people need." Across the city, Snake sat in a windowless cell, staring at the wall. His phone had been taken, his network shattered, his followers scattered or arrested. But in the back of his mind, one thing still burned. The people had come, and somewhere out there he believed they would rise again. But for now, the city held. The monarchy held. And Marcus Ellison, guard, immigrant, son, soldier, became more than a man in a red jacket. He became a symbol, not of silence, but of strength. The palace was quiet, not the eerie silence of danger or dread, but the solemn kind, the kind that comes after a storm has passed, when everyone's just waiting to see what's left standing. The Queen sat alone in her private chamber, sunlight filtering through tall windows onto the polished mahogany table before her. A porcelain teacup sat untouched, steam curling upward into the silence. On the far wall, the news played without sound, footage looping of Marcus pinning Snake to the ground, of protesters being pushed back from the gates, of the Queen stepping forward to end the chaos with only her words. The public's response had been swift. Headlines across the globe praised the guard's stoicism, the Queen's composure, and the restraint shown by the palace. But not all commentary was celebratory. Some questioned how it had come this far. Others demanded accountability. Still more warned that Snake's uprising, though crushed in spectacle, might only be the beginning. A soft knock on the door. "Enter," she said. Her head of security stepped in, holding a thin folder marked with a red stripe. "We've completed the post-operation report, Your Majesty. Arrests made, injuries treated. Snake and 6 of his inner circle are in custody. We've frozen any assets tied to his backers." The Queen didn't look up, and the crowds dispersed, some angry, some ashamed, but the violence has stopped, for now. She nodded. "Sit." The officer hesitated, then lowered himself into the chair across from her. She folded her hands. "Tell me about Marcus. Still under watch. He's safe. He's back at the palace residence for debriefing and medical review. He insisted on staying active." "Of course he did." The Queen looked past the officer to the window. Birds crossed the skyline in the distance, flying toward the river. "He's more than a guard now." "You realize that?" "Yes, ma'am, he's become a symbol." "I'm aware. That's dangerous." The officer paused. "You think we should take him off the front lines?" "I think we need to be very careful what we ask of him next." She turned her gaze fully to him. "And I think we need to address the rot that gave Snake his voice in the first place." That afternoon, Marcus stood in a quiet corridor outside the Queen's private study, still in partial uniform. His jaw was bruised. His right hand was taped from a fractured knuckle. But his stance was the same, straight, grounded, calm. The door opened. "She'll see you now." Marcus stepped inside. The Queen rose from her chair, moving toward the fireplace with a small cane. Despite her age, her presence remained steady, sharp. "Please walk with me," she said. They moved slowly, side by side, along a private garden path visible through the glass doors. No one followed. Marcus broke the silence first. "I didn't do anything extraordinary. You stood when others fell. You stayed quiet when others shouted. You fought only when you had no choice. That's more rare than you realize." He nodded. "I didn't do it for recognition." "I know." They walked a few more paces. The Queen glanced at a blooming vine curling along the stone wall. "This place has stood for hundreds of years," she said. "But walls don't hold up a country. People do. People like you. That crowd didn't come for me. They came for what I represent. And the problem is, they're not entirely wrong. Marcus looked at her, surprised. You believe that? I believe discontent doesn't appear overnight, and no chain reaction begins without a spark. People have lost faith in systems, in fairness, in the idea that dignity matters, that their voices matter. And what do? We listen. We don't respond with force alone. We respond with truth, with action. She stopped walking and turned toward him. And we start by lifting voices that prove restraint still means something. That honor isn't just old tradition. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Would you speak? Marcus blinked. Speak? Publicly, on behalf of the guards, on behalf of the palace, as a man who stood tall, not as a symbol, but as yourself. Marcus was silent for a long time. Then he exhaled. Only if I can say what I believe. I wouldn't have it any other way. 2 days later, Marcus Ellison stood at a podium in a palace briefing room. Dozens of reporters stared back. Camera lenses blinked. Microphones crowded toward him like branches stretching for sunlight. He didn't wear his bearskin hat today. No sword, just the red tunic, the one everyone now recognized. He cleared his throat. My name is Marcus Ellison. I'm a royal guard. I was born in South London. My parents worked hard. My grandfather taught me to carry myself with dignity. That's what I've tried to do. He paused. I stood my ground because I believed in the duty I swore to. But what I faced wasn't just a gang leader. It was something deeper. Anger, resentment, people who feel unheard. I didn't raise my hand until I had to. And I'm not here to speak for every person who stood behind a fence that day. But I will say this. We don't fix our country by tearing it apart. We fix it by standing, calm, firm, together, by listening more than we shout, and by never forgetting that power without purpose is just noise. He stepped away from the mic. The room erupted in a mix of silence and applause. Some reporters didn't clap, but enough did. Later that evening, the Queen watched the full speech from her sitting room. When it ended, she smiled, and for the first time in weeks, she let her shoulders relax. Night had returned to London, stretching a veil of calm across its streets. But beneath that calm, something pulsed, unspoken, unresolved. The protests had dwindled. Snake was in custody. The city had taken a breath, but it hadn't exhaled yet. And Marcus Ellison knew why. He stood alone on the palace balcony, looking out over the darkened city. His speech had reached millions. The palace had called it a moment of healing. The papers labeled him the guard who held the line. But his gut told him something else. This wasn't the end. It was an intermission. In a quiet cell deep beneath a federal holding center, Snake sat on the edge of a thin cot, staring at the wall. His beard was thicker now, his eyes sharper. He wasn't restless. He was focused. A soft buzz rattled the intercom above the steel door. Visitor. Snake didn't move until the door opened. The man in the suit walked in again. Same slick hair, same cold demeanor. I figured you'd show up eventually, Snake muttered. The man took a seat across from him. You made a mistake. Snake chuckled. Which one? Punching a national hero or making the Queen lose her tea? The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. You broke the timing. The spectacle wasn't the finale. It was supposed to be the beginning. Snake leaned forward, eyes narrowing. You never told me she'd show up. You never told me about the damn guard's training, or his reach, or that he'd speak to the whole country. He beat me twice. And you still think this isn't over? The man opened a small folder, placed it on the table between them. Inside were photos, maps, blueprints of data centers, locations of press conferences, names of government contacts. Snake's eyes flicked over the contents. Recognition, then anticipation. What's this? The man stood. The final warning. They think they've won. They think arresting you, airing one speech, will return order. But pressure doesn't disappear. It shifts. He paused at the door. When you're ready, I'll be waiting. The next morning, Marcus woke before dawn. He'd barely slept. The last few days had been filled with cameras, interviews, follow-ups, briefings. His words had calmed some of the nation, but Snake's face still lingered in his mind like a bruise. There were things Marcus couldn't ignore. Snake wasn't the only one behind this. The crowds moved too quickly. The messaging was too sharp. The logistics too refined. Someone else was funding the movement. He dressed in silence, then walked to the lower wing of the palace to meet with the Queen's intelligence coordinator. They sat across from each other over a table of reports. "We've traced some of the chatter back to a group with offshore accounts," the officer said. "Shell companies, anonymous donors. The people who backed Snake aren't just rebels. They're tacticians." Why fund him? Because Snake was loud, dangerous, disposable. He was the spark. But there's something more organized behind the curtain. And if they're still out there, then Snake's arrest isn't a victory, it's a delay. Later that day, a private message was intercepted by MI5. It was posted to a dark forum used by former Ironhorn members. The image showed a chessboard with the queen piece knocked over and a pawn standing in the center. No text, no signature, just an upload timestamp, 11:11 a.m. The queen stood in the map room, hands clasped behind her back, as the latest developments were briefed. She studied the photo on the screen. "It's not about Snake anymore," she said quietly. "It's about destabilization, symbolism, and whoever's behind this wants to tear down more than fences." She turned to the room. "We respond now, not with speeches, with vigilance, with readiness." Her head of security nodded. "Marcus? Still active? Still sharp? Good. Keep him close, and send a message to whoever posted that image." A beat passed. The officer asked, "What kind of message?" Her eyes narrowed. "Let them know. The game isn't over. But this time, we play on our terms." That evening, Marcus sat on a bench just inside the palace courtyard. A breeze rustled through the hedges. Somewhere in the distance, church bells rang the hour. A palace courier approached quietly, handed him a folded note, and left. Marcus opened it. Only one line was written in the Queen's own hand. "You may be a guard by title, but now you guard something far greater. Stay sharp." He folded the note and slipped it into his pocket. Because he already knew. Snake might have been the storm, but someone else had lit the sky.